Hostile Waters, a cult classic you've probably never played and probably never even heard of. I absolutely love this game. This early 2000s classic brings to the table an interesting combination of vehicle combat and strategy elements to create a fast-paced and possibly challenging experience. This video aims to give you an introduction to the game and will be split into two elements. The first will cover the lore and the backstory, with the second covering the gameplay itself. I hope that when you're done watching this, you'll be curious enough to go and give this game a try yourself. So without further ado, let's get into it. So what exactly is Hostile Waters? Well, as previously mentioned, this game is a hybrid between a vehicle shooter and a strategy game. Though the main focus is on combat, the game is driven by a grand strategy played out on a war map. The game features an interesting story, as it's set in a not too distant, yet believe it or not, utopian future. However, as the title implies, this piece is not to last. Before we go into the lore and backstory of Hostile Waters, I will first give a brief rundown on the developers of this game, the studio Rage Software Limited. Rage Software was a British video game studio formed in Liverpool in the early 90s. Its games are marked by an emphasis on graphical effects with arcade gameplay. Their first title, a game called Striker, sold more than 1 million copies in its 2-year life cycle and established Rage as a major player in the interactive entertainment industry. The company then went on a rapid expansion through the 90s and partnered with multiple third-party software publishers for the distribution of its titles. Rage Games floated on the London Stock Exchange in 1996 as Rage Software plc. They continued to form commercial partnerships with major publishing houses including Microsoft, Dell, Intel, Compaq, Nintendo, Sony, etc. In 1999 they delisted from the London Stock Exchange as Rage Software Limited in 1999. In 2000 and onwards, began to expand into publishing, however costs of publishing and a run of bad games that didn't sell too well, notably a David Beckham franchise that was botched, eventually led to the company closing in 2003 due to bankruptcy. At the time they went under, they were one of the oldest game developers in the UK and at their peak had offices in Liverpool, Birmingham, Sheffield, Newcastle, Bristol, Warrington. At the time of their bankruptcy, they also had several titles to their name, including this gem of a game we're about to dive into right now. If you want to look at Rage's other titles, I'll leave the link to the wiki in the description. With that out the way, let's dive into Hostile Waters, kicking off with the backstory and the lore. Our story begins in the year 2012, when a revolutionary World War III breaks out between the people and the old elite, aka the Old Guard. While the details of this war are largely lost, it was a short but bloody affair. There were many deaths in the millions on both sides. However, as time went on, the people would eventually get the upper hand and overthrow the Old Guard. While most of their leaders were arrested and eventually imprisoned, several escaped and were able to stay in hiding for several years afterwards. This remnant of the Old Guard would consolidate its forces and eventually reform itself into the Cabal, who are the main antagonists of Hostile Waters. In the years after the Great War, the Cabal would, in secret, slowly regain their strength by stockpiling munitions and vehicles and waiting for the opportune moment to strike back and take back power. As the Cabal watches and waits, the victorious people set up a new government in the city that would later become known as Central. This new government quickly sets to work repairing the damages of the Great War. It was at this point that the last war on Earth was truly over. In the 20 years that would pass after the Great War, society was reformed on a model of peace and fairness for all, and above all else the abolition of war. Thanks to the development of new technology, in particular nanotechnology, this new society was eventually able to move past the concept of money as well. Central had successfully created a society of plentiful resources where no person's needs went uncatered for. But how was this exactly possible? The answer is in nanotechnology, in particular the nanotech assembler. The nanotech assembler is a powerful microscopic computerized engine that is capable of building objects from nothing up. Billions upon billions of these sit within specially built creation engines that allow the user to build any commodity they wish from a few handfuls of dirt and scrap material. Without this technological marvel, there is no way that society could have bounced back so quickly from the Great War, much less thrived in the last 20 years. This technology will also play a very pivotal role in the coming conflict to come, as soon this new peaceful society will need to use this technology to relearn war. This then brings us to the year 2032 and the present day. The Cabal makes their move, sending missile strikes to the capital and many major cities around the world. The shock and horror of these attacks send the population into a wave of panic. Central must act, and fast. The origination of these missile attacks is tracked to an island chicane in the South Pacific. Central's initial response to send a Spec Ops team in to gather intel and assess the situation. However, within hours of being dropped in, contact is lost. The entire team, along with a number of scientists who were sent to investigate anomalous quantities of cryogenic material being shipped to the islands, have gone dark. Running out of options, Central is forced to reactivate the Antaeus program, the last great battle cruisers of the Great War. The Antaeus cruisers were scrapped following the Great War and the defeat of the Old Guard. However, a lone vessel was preserved just in case society ever had to relearn war. With the arrival of the Cabal and the threat they pose, Central has decided to reactivate the last Antaeus cruiser in existence. You are the captain of this vessel. This vessel will be your base of operations as you fight your way into the heart of the island chicane to depose the Cabal. The Antaeus cruiser is a one-of-a-kind supercarrier. It contains everything one needs to fight a fast-moving amphibious war. The vessel has an onboard command center, multiple vehicle bays, and an onboard nanofactory for constructing whatever is needed very quickly from the materials brought back by the scavengers. Inside the ship's databanks is the Soul Catcher interface system, a series of computer chips containing the minds of the former crew, ready to be salvaged and used again if needed to pilot their specially adapted craft into combat. Thanks to the Soul Catcher interface, you'll be able to leverage the experience of the greatest fighters of the Great War. It's up to you to use these men and women's experience to defeat the Cabal before they can do any more damage. With the scene set, we now move on to gameplay. Fighting your way into the Cabal's island chain requires careful planning and strategy. With each mission you're given a briefing and a number of objectives to complete. In general, it's totally up to you as to how you achieve the objectives. However, it's strongly advised that you check out the war room before proceeding. Using the cruiser's onboard nanofactories, you can build and outfit your strike team according to the situation. Once you've assembled your team, you can use the war map to coordinate and send them into battle. You can order them to attack a specific target, or in this case you can order them to clear the general area. With our orders given, off our team goes to execute the mission. As you can see, with the right loadout, your team can be a very lethal fighting force. This wouldn't be a strategy game without good old resource management, and for that the Scarab has you covered. In order to build your various weapons of war, you need energy, as shown in the crudely drawn circle in the corner. The Scarab gathers energy by disassembling scrap material on the battlefield, sending the energy back to the carrier. You must always keep an eye on your energy, however luckily on a battlefield there's plenty of scrap material to be found. And also, you can assign a soul catch to do this thankless job for you, so you don't have to worry about it. An unfortunate side effect of the reactivation was that your database got corrupted, and so most of your technology was lost. Luckily this can be remedied. Using the carrier's onboard sampling unit, you'll be able to retrieve technology from the wrecks of the lost vehicles of the Great War, and as you fight your way deeper into the chicane, you'll also get the opportunity to liberate the Cabal's technology for your own uses. No two encounters are the exact same, and different situations will require different approaches to defeat your enemies. However, you have the freedom to decide how to best approach the task at hand. Is stealth more your thing? You prefer to sneak up in a cloaked vehicle, and then drop an ambush when the time is right? Or are you more the guns blazing explodey type? It's totally up to you how to best use the tools available to you according to the situation. Perhaps in a situation a combined arms approach may be more effective. In some fights it may be better to take direct control rather than giving the vehicle to a soul catcher. Perhaps the situation may necessitate fire support from Antaeus. In some situations, a lone wolf may be more effective than a full strike team. Some environments are darker than others, and in some occasions you may need to use the night vision facility. As you can see, using the right loadout and the right tactics for the situation at hand is very important. Knowing how to use the right equipment and tactics for the situation will ensure victory, and this is something you'll need to master before you get too deep into the chicane and the nightmares begin to reveal themselves. As you push closer to the centre of the Cabal's power, it'll soon become apparent that missiles weren't the only things they were developing in secret. The Cabal were also running a secret science experiment, creating mutations that even they may not be able to control. And very soon this nightmare is to be set loose on the rest of the planet. Are you sure you can handle it? The nightmarish creatures you will encounter in these islands are more of a threat than the Cabal ever were, and are inherently much more dangerous. Your mission may be about to take a much darker turn. It is very much possible that this new menace may just be an existential threat to humanity itself. These are hostile waters. To conclude this video, I want to reiterate what I said right at the start. I absolutely love this game, and it's one of my favourite games of all time. Despite its age, I think Hostile Waters is a very good experience, and you should definitely give this game a chance. For an early 2000s game, it was ahead of its time in many fields, and presented a unique experience. I have not seen any other good games with this sort of playstyle. So I think give it a chance, you won't regret it. If you've watched this far and have enjoyed the video, please give this a like and even a sub, as I have more content on the way. And if you want to stick around to the very end, you'll get a slight teaser as to what's coming next. Also, if you'd like to place a comment, any feedback is appreciated. Thank you very much.